The Maelstrom Hunter by Crimson QB Sage, Chapter 10, Toads and Farewells. What was Professor Osmond's office? What was the collective cry of the room's occupants, save for Fu, Han, Roshi, and Professor Osmond, the latter only raising an eyebrow. You all heard me, Roshi stated. Team Archfiend has to disappear. But why? Ruby asked in protest. If two Noonkin from the Elemental Nations can find us, it will only be a matter of time until more people find us, Roshi said. To them, we're just weapons to use at their beck and call, which is why we left in the first place. If we stay here, instead of going into hiding, more shinobi will find us, and this academy will become a war zone for people trying to capture us, Fu finished, leaving the students and headmaster in silence as they contemplated the insect faunus girl's words. It was about a minute later that the silence was broken. If I were to allow you four to leave, what would you do? Osmond asked, his voice remaining a neutral tone. What? You can't really be considering this, Professor Osmond. They're our friends, Yang protested. It's not up to you. This is for them to decide, Osmond countered, all eyes turned to the fortune jerky. I agree to going into hiding for the time being, Roshi said. As do I, Han said. Same here. Fu added, all eyes ended up on the blonde fox faunus as they appeared to be in deep thought. I agree, Naruto stated with hesitant and sorrow in his voice. More and more people will come after us, and I'm not willing to risk everyone else just for the sake of not being captured. And with that, the blonde jerky shuffled out of the room, followed by his three teammates. After leaving the headmaster's office, Naruto shuffled, turning to walk and eventually running. As he approached the entrance to the Emerald Forest, he pumped Chakra into his feet and took off towards the cliffside. The sun had just begun to set, giving the sky a red-orange hue as light reflected off the trees, giving them an emerald-like shine that the forest was named for. Said Blonde was momentarily reminded of the events of his exile 3 years ago. He had finally come to have a peaceful life, good friends, ambitions, but now all that he had achieved from his time since he was exiled was for naught. Finally arriving at his destination, the Blonde slumped onto the ground as tears streamed down his face, no longer able to hold back his sadness. Kit, the QB started, feeling his continued sadness. Damn it, even this far away from the Elemental Nations, I'm still one of their targets, Naruto thought. Now what will I do? Naruto, a feminine voice cried out from the distance. Turning around, Naruto saw the fast approaching form of Ruby coming towards him. Hey, Ruby, Naruto said, sadness laced in his voice. Ruby shot another bullet from Crescent Rose to get the momentum to be launched towards the blonde jerky. Landing on the nearby ground, Ruby went over to Naruto. I'm sorry, but it's for the best of everyone that I go away, Naruto said. But what about you? Ruby asked. Naruto said, Blonde being oddly quiet. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me, Naruto said. The two stayed quiet after that, watching the sun set over the horizon. Will I ever see you again? Ruby asked. Naruto responded by giving a small smile and a thumbs up. You can count on it, I promise. And Naruto Uzumaki never breaks his promises, Naruto said lightheartedly. The sun had just now finally fallen below the horizon, the sky's red-orange hue becoming a dark red-violet color. Ruby, knowing that Naruto would be gone for some time, felt herself becoming a bit bold. She leaned over to the blonde fox faunus and gave him a small kiss on the lips. Time seemed to stop for the blonde as he was taken by surprise by Ruby's action, but eventually he relaxed and began to kiss back. The kiss lasted for only a few seconds, but it felt like a blissful eternity for the two. When the kiss broke, both Naruto and Ruby had a small blush and a smile on their faces. Come back in one piece, Ruby said. Naruto could only nod his head in agreement, dumbfounded at Ruby's actions in a good way too. After a few minutes, Ruby got up and went back to the academy. The sky had turned dark, and the only source of light being the fractured moon and the stars above. Okay, so another song plays right here. So if you want to put it on, you can. It's a Shooting Star, pretty much the first Naruto Shippuden ending song, and that's it. I'm continuing now. Naruto lied down on the grass and put his hands behind his head, using them as a makeshift pillow as he stared up at the shining stars, pondering the day's events, specifically the kiss. Ruby kissed him. Her lips to him tasted like sweet strawberries. He may have gotten a whole lot smarter, but that didn't mean he wasn't still oblivious to feelings from the opposite gender. But now that he thought about it, all those times that she had a blush on her face around him, the small hugs, laughing at his corny jokes and quips, their friends somehow finding ways for the two to be either close or alone together. Naruto then thought about his own feelings for Ruby. She loved him, but he loved her back. He was always felt his face warm slightly around her, indicating he blushed when she was around. Every time he looked at her, he felt his heart beat faster. Every time she laughed, it made him laugh. Every time they were alone or intimately close, she gave him butterflies. Yes, Naruto thought, I do love her. Standing back up, Naruto proceeded to pump chakra into his feet and leap off in the direction of Beacon Academy. When he got to the campus, it was eerily quiet save for the sounds of the gentle breeze and a few nocturnal creatures. Naruto then proceeded to return to his team dormitory, being as quiet as possible as to not wake any of the other students. Reaching his room, he quietly opened the door to the sight of his other three teammates packing up. Fu, Han, and Roshi all looked up from what they were doing to see who had entered the room. Seeing as it was Naruto, the three resumed packing all of their items. Naruto went over to his bed and pulled the top drawer of his bedside cabinet out, revealing 5 different scrolls. Grabbing 3 of the scrolls, the blonde fox faunus tossed each of his teammates one of the scrolls. Grabbing the scrolls thrown at them, they each looked up to their team leader. "Those 3 are spare empty sealing scrolls I made. Hopefully you guys know how they work and find use of them," Naruto said, returning to packing all his unsealed items into one of the 2 remaining scrolls. The other scroll containing the black flame of the Amaterasu. Soon enough, all the members of Team Archfiend had packed their items and personal belongings and proceeded to head out the door one at a time. Roshi was the last person who was still in the room. As he walked through the doorway, the monkey faunus paused and took one last look inside their dorm room. With a heavy sigh, Roshi left the room and closed the door. Beacon Academy, main entrance. The four Jinchuriki proceeded to the main entrance of Beacon Academy, the very same entrance that they walked through on their first day. The four faunus stared at one another suddenly, as if having a mental conversation. Minutes passed as the night continued on. "So this is it, isn't it?" Naruto said, breaking the silence that permeated the air. "Actually, Fu, Han, and I are going to stick together, watch each other's backs," Roshi stated, getting nods of agreement from Fu and Han. "What are you going to do?" Fu asked her blonde teammate. "I think I'll take refuge in my summoning contracts realm," Naruto said, having heard of Mount Miyaboko from the toads every now and then. "You have a summoning contract?" Roshi asked. "Is it with the foxes?" "No, I'm with the toads," Naruto answered, surprising the other 3. "What made you think I had the fox summoning contract?" "Well, one of the perks of the deal with Sun was Ape's summoning contract," Roshi said. "I signed the summoning contract," Fu added. "I'm aligned to the horse summoning contract," Han stated. By the time I made my deal with the QB, I had already signed the Toad summoning contract," Naruto said. Silence filled the air once more, lasting for over half an hour. Roshi, Han, and Fu all turned to the east, preparing to leave. "I guess this is goodbye," Roshi said to Naruto, offering up his hand raised in the form of a fist, to which Naruto returned the gesture by giving him a fist bump. "This isn't goodbye, it's just see you later," Naruto said, a small smirk on his face. After saying their goodbyes, Naruto watched as his 3 teammates leapt off in an eastward direction. Once they were out of sight, Naruto bit down on his thumb, hard enough to draw blood. Naruto did the boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram hand signs in that order and threw his hand onto the ground. "Kuchiyosen no Jutsu," Naruto quietly called out as a puff of smoke covered the area. When the smoke cleared, a large orange toad with purple markings around his eyes, mouth, and stomach. "Yo, Naruto," the large toad said. "Hey, Gamakichi, how's it going?" Naruto said. "This summoning seems a bit early considering the usual monthly summoning for news from Jiraiya," the now identified Gamakichi pointed out. "Something came up. The Katsuki have found me," Naruto said, his face becoming serious. Gamakichi as well. "Do you think now is a good time to visit Mount Miyaboku?" "I'll have to inform the elders. It's up to them whether or not to allow you into our summoning realm," Gamakichi said. "Summon me back in about 5 minutes or so, give or take a couple of minutes." Naruto nodded his head, and with that, Gamakichi went back to his summoning realm to discuss this with the elders. 10 minutes passed when suddenly Naruto felt himself being pulled into a different direction, disappearing with the poof sound and leaving a cloud of smoke. Naruto Uzumaki left remnant Mount Miyaboku. With a puff of smoke, Naruto appeared on Mount Miyaboku. The sun had just risen above the horizon. Mountains and mushrooms of various sizes loomed overhead. Looking around, Naruto noticed a few toads of varying sizes hopping around. Before Naruto could continue taking in his surroundings, he was whacked on his head by a small cane-wielding green toad with white hair styled in somewhat of a mohawk, very thick eyebrows, and a small goatee, wearing 2 capes, one high-collared and the other more simple. "Ow!" Naruto cried out, rubbing his head in pain. "Naruto, it's good to see ya, boy," Fukasaku said, whacking Naruto over the head with his cane again. "Then why are you hitting me?" Naruto comically sobbed, only to get hit over the head a 3rd time. "Because you haven't the slightest bit of heads up or so when coming to Mount Miyaboku," Fukasaku replied. "Pa, stop whacking the boy over the head," and the voice called out. Why should I, Ma? The gaki needs a stern whack, Fukasaku, also known as Paul, yelled. That doesn't mean you have to whack him over the head 3 times, the now identified Shima or Ma yelled. Soon enough, the elder Toad couple got into a long, heated argument that lasted nearly half an hour. The argument would have continued had it not been for a very loud cough of attention from Gamakichi. All right, welcome to Mount Miyaboku, Pa said. And you came at a good time too. Ma was about to make breakfast. One horrid breakfast of various bugs later, Naruto appeared to be gagging on something. His skin was a slick pea green and had several new lumps of bruises that sat upon his head. With a shudder, he fell onto the ground in a curled up fetal position. It wasn't that bad, was it, Pa? Ma asked. Well, of course it was. You nearly burnt the bug casserole, Pa cried out. It wouldn't have been burnt if you didn't bring me to Kichi to get the boy, Ma countered. Please, not again, Naruto comically cried out, only for his exclamation to fall onto deaf ears. Well, Kichi said it was urgent, Pa retorted. Why are we arguing again? Ma yelled. I don't know, Pa replied. Weren't you going to tell the boys something? Ma yelled in an argumentative voice. I think so, Pa responded in an equally argumentative voice. What were you going to tell me? Naruto asked, both Ma and Pa turning to him. Oh, right, forgot you were here, Pa said, causing Naruto to face fault at the statement. It took some convincing from Gamakichi and Ma, but we've come to an agreement. Which is? Naruto asked. We believe that it is time for you to learn to be a Toad Sage, to learn Senjutsu, Pa replied, his expression turning serious. With Jiraiya and Tsunade, elemental nations coastal time. This Akatsuki leader is in Amakakure, correct? Tsunade asked, downing another glass of sake. Yes, Jiraiya replied, but that place conducts through checks of anyone entering and exiting their territory, and they track how long visitors stay. Tsunade stated, just preparing for the joint Chunin exams is difficult enough, difficult each time because the village is so closed off to others. Doesn't seem like a place where the Akatsuki leader can move about freely. However, because security is so strict, they're able to keep other nations from learning about their internal affairs and hence keep a lid on any shame, Jiraiya explained. Shame? Tsunade inquired. It seems that land has seen much internal strife, and the village itself has been split into two, Jiraiya stated. Word has it that the leader of one side is also the leader of the Akatsuki. That land is surrounded by the three great nations of earth, wind, and fire, Tsunade said, and from ages past it has been the battleground for their conflicts. As a result, there has never been domestic stability, and the number of refugees is continuously on the rise. That is why I will infiltrate and verify the information we have gathered, Jiraiya said. Then we can plan accordingly. It's too dangerous to go alone. Tsunade exclaimed, concerned for the idiotic self-proclaimed super pervert. I am one of the legendary Sanin of Konoha. You know what that means as well, Jiraiya said, causing Tsunade to look away. I'm sorry that you always get the short end of the stick, Tsunade said, causing Jiraiya to laugh. What's with you? He asked, still laughing. I'm saying you were supposed to be Hokage. The Sanden Hokage always wanted you to be the next too. Tsunade started but was cut off by Jiraiya. I was never cut out for that sort of thing. Being on my own suits me too well, Jiraiya stated. You regretted not being able to stop Orochimaru, so all that time you were tracking his movements alone. Isn't that right? Tsunade said. Jiraiya remained silent, thinking back on their fellow Sanin's death. He didn't die by Hunter Nin, nor did he die in combat, but Orochimaru had succumbed to the effects of his own jutsu, unable to find a suitable host to house his soul. I no longer need to do so, Jiraiya said before a smile found its way onto his face. That means I get to release the sequel to my novel sooner. Fact is stranger than fiction, isn't it? Tsunade said, staring at her reflection in another glass of sake. Who would have imagined that Orochimaru would die? Tsunade said, remember how the three of us would go up against Sandem Gigi, and the flat-chested Tsunade has become the big-bosomed Hokage. Times are changing by the second, Jiraiya said. You were beautiful back then, and now you're a 50-something old granny. It pains me to see how all the memories of your lost friends and loved ones are stored inside that big breast of yours, and you know, the numbers will continue to grow, Jiraiya finished, surprising Tsunade and down another glass of sake. I guess I shouldn't wallow in sadness. My duty is to be a model for the next generation and to help them. For that, I'd happily give my life, Jiraiya states. It's what makes us old folks cool. See? A few minutes later, after paying the tab for food and sake, we find the two remaining legendary Sanin in the alleyway outside the restaurant. Tsunade vomiting from too much sake, Jiraiya rubbing her back. Your drinking habits are worse than mine. Want to stop and rest somewhere? Jiraiya asked, the duo moving from the alleyway to a park bench. Akatsuki. The leader is capable of organizing a group so powerful. Who knows how strong he may be? Tsunade questioned. You'll be walking right into the enemy's territory. Well then, I should set out, Jiraiya said, getting up from the park bench. Come back alive, Tsunade said in a whisper, causing Jiraiya to look back at her in slight surprise. If I lost you too, you'll cry for me? That'll make me happy, Jiraiya said in a cheerful tone. But I doubt that it'll be like the time Dan died. You idiot, Tsunade said. Then how about you make a bet with me? Jiraiya asked, catching Tsunade's attention. You bet that I will die. After all, you always lose, he said, leaving Tsunade's mouth agape in surprise. But if I make it back alive, Jiraiya stated, his face turning a serious before laughing. Joking, I'm just joking, I'm grateful to you. Rejection makes a man stronger, Jiraiya said, pulling out a copy of each of Paradise. In other words, you can't call yourself a real man unless you can laugh at stuff like that. Better yet, make a joke out of it. So a man's duty is to be strong, Tsunade questioned. Kind of. And besides, men aren't the only ones who seek happiness, Jiraiya said coolly. Huh, stop trying to act so cool. Without a woman, you guys can't be rejected, Tsunade said, causing Jiraiya to laugh. That's so true, Jiraiya said, a short silence following after. If anything happens, contact me through your toad. I'll rush over myself, Tsunade offered. No need for that. You must not leave here. The village relies on you now, Jiraiya said. There are other candidates for Hokage, Tsunade pointed out. There can be no stability if the Hokage keeps changing. Right now, you are the only one who can be Hokage, Jiraiya stated. There's Kakashi, Tsunade offered, and eventually there's also Naruto. Jiraiya chuckled a bit. You're really sold on Naruto, aren't you? Jiraiya asked. Kakashi is too lazy and late for everything, and Naruto? I doubt that the council could even agree to letting him back into the shinobi ranks, let alone becoming Hokage, although I can understand. Your kid brother Nawaki, your sweetheart Dan, and Naruto too. I guess you could say they chase the same dream. Sure, Kakashi can step in, but Naruto will be near impossible, Jiraiya finished. You still have high hopes for him too? Tsunade commented. Yeah, I wonder how the Gaki is doing, Jiraiya said. My intel on Kosuke has shown they sent 2 of their members after him. Do you think that he'll come back? Jiraiya asked. Tsunade asked. I don't know. From his letters that I've gotten over the years, it seems as if he's happy wherever he is, Jiraiya replied. Their conversation continued until the sun had set. One last warning, Jiraiya said. Beware of Root. Yeah, I know, Tsunade replied. Jiraiya nodded his head and started walking away. Ah, good then, Jiraiya said, walking in the direction of Amakakure. He raised his right hand up in a thumbs up. Farewell, he said as he walked away, tears falling down Tsunade's eyes as she watched him walk away. The Maelstrom Hunter, Remnants of the Past, Part 3, The Corruption of the Crown. Queen Kaguya cried, bawling her eyes out as her heart broke at what she had to do. For every power, there was a price to pay. In this case, the price for the power of the Shinju was her sanity. At first, it was not noticeable. Her marriage and family were perfect. She and her husband were in a loving and committed relationship and had 2 wonderful children. But soon enough, she started hearing the Shinju's will, its voice becoming more frequent and vocal each day. Soon enough, her memories began disappearing, and Shinju was destroying her soul piece by piece. And her fate of insanity, she had mortally wounded her husband. When she recovered in enough sanity to regain control, she had seen the damage she had done. To ensure that she wouldn't hurt her own flesh and blood, she planned to send Hogoromo and Julius into exile to the farthest regions of her kingdom, so as they wouldn't see their mother lose her sanity and injure her own 2 sons, or worse, have them become influenced by the Shinju as well. So now, here we find the 2 sons packed and sent away on a carriage. Kaguya watched as her 2 sons left. When the carriages were out of sight, she broke down crying once more. An hour passed before she stopped crying. When she stopped crying, Kaguya rushed through their castle, heading for the family room as she felt more of her memories slip away bit by bit. Arriving at the family room, she sat down on one of the chairs holding a familiar picture in her hands. It was a simple picture, Hagoromo and Julia smiling like goofballs, and Kaguya and Arthur holding each other smiling. All of Kaguya's memories were nearly gone as she held onto the last of her memories as long as she could. My 2 sons. Who were they? Kaguya thought as tears fell down her face once more, staring into the pictures in her hands. Hagoromo, Julius, I must protect them, she thought, the last of her sanity disappearing. Mother will protect you. On that day, the Shinju reclaimed the power that the princess had taken, along with its wielder, but it could not destroy all of her soul. As the mother's desire to protect her children remained, she would protect her children from the world by destroying it. End of chapter 10.